everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the Power365 Show. Today's podcast, totally different, totally unique. I've got Samir back and I've got Saurabh also on the show. So the two of them are live in this episode, and we're going to cover off 30 PowerApps Champions stories in 30 minutes. If you've looked at the link to this episode, you know it's going to be a little more than 30 minutes. Anyhow, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/136. And there's going to be lots of show notes, so check them out. This is an amazing discussion. We don't speed up. We kind of keep it consistent, even though we knew it taking a little longer than normal. If you're a Microsoft partner and you want to, if you feel like bulk up and get some stories in your backpack to tell to customers, listen to this episode. So many great stories in here around the Power Platform from so many different sectors, industries, and people's background. Check it out. I hope you enjoy these two gentlemen right now. Gentlemen, Samir and Saurabh, welcome to the Power365 Show.
Happy to be here.
Yep, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
Excellent. Okay, so we're doing something unique today in that I've got two guests with me. Before we get underway with our unique program and uncovering the stories of all these PowerApp champs, Samir, you've already been on the show and got to know you a bit and the journey and the story you've been on. So we'll in the show notes, we'll put a link back to that episode. But Saurabh, can you tell me a bit about where you live, work, and play?
Absolutely. So I live in Seattle. I've been in Seattle for a while now, 18 years. Work at Microsoft those 18 years. I live there, for those who know Seattle, I live there by Green Lake with my beautiful wife and my young 6-year-old, Zoe.
Wow. Very nice. Zoe, was that?
Yes, Zoe.
Very nice, very nice. So where did you come from originally?
Originally from India. I did my computer science engineering in Pune, in India.
Pune.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
is that where you grew up as well, in Pune?
I grew up in Pune as well. So my family is originally from northern India. My village in India is actually at 10,000 feet elevation in the Himalayas. So it's exotic. But I grew up in a city fairly close to Samir. I think 2 hours from Samir in Pune. And then I did my engineering there, master's in the US, and joined Microsoft. My first job was Microsoft.
Is that like the Sikh region of India?
It's close to that. Punjab is close to where I grew up from. It's the place I come from is called Uttarakhand. It's and that's where the village is on the other side of the Himalayas from Nepal.
Wow. Okay. And but 18 years now. Have you been at Microsoft the whole 18 years?
Yes, I have.
Wow. Okay. And how did you get into Microsoft to start with? Straight from university, I take it?
I did an internship at Microsoft, and I had an amazing experience. I came back, and that's it. It's the good thing with Microsoft is, given how large the company is, you can reinvent yourself within the company. And it's almost easier to reinvent yourself in the company because they'll take a bet on you. So I moved from engineering to program management, from doing .NET to doing cloud, to running a cloud service, to doing a SaaS service like PowerApps, then moving from engineering to customer success. So it keeps it fresh. Yeah.
So you're in PowerApps now. How did that journey? How did you get into PowerApps? Were you there from day one?
Pretty much, actually. I was doing product management for Azure Redis Cache. That was my last gig, and then I had done program management for 15 years. I was looking for something new, and we were just about to launch this new service at that time, codenamed Kratos Apps. And I think I was program manager number 2 on that initiative. I did product for a while, and then I wanted to do more customer-facing role within the same product. So I sort of started a one-man customer success team for PowerApps almost 4 years back now.
Okay, so when did PowerApps become known as PowerApps? Was that only in the last 2 years?
In the last 3.5 years. I think about, we did private preview around 3.5 years back, and after our we wanted it to be PowerApps, but once we got to the legal issues of getting the name, it was 3.5 years back when we announced our private preview. 3 years back was, I think, our GA. And of course, it has the legacy of what was almost a research project to Sienna much before that. So it's been a long investment for Microsoft.
Yeah. And I take it it's going to be a longer investment into the future.
Absolutely.
So tell us a bit about this program that you guys run, because, although you're on the technical side, part of what you do, you also do a lot around storytelling of the PowerApp Champs. Can you tell us how this program started and basically how it works?
Yeah, and I can talk to just 1 minute to it. What we run today is what we now call the Power CAT team, the Power Customer Advisory team. And put simply, I think my team does two things. One is help customers be successful and then celebrate that success. And so helping customers be successful is essentially the delivery arm of my organization, right? We'll work with customers, be in the trenches with them, make sure their solutions are successful. And then Samir does a phenomenal job of taking all the learnings from those engagements and celebrating that success and putting it out there so a lot more folks can then take learning from it and scale, because there's only so many customers we can directly engage with.
Yeah. So was this an internal initiative that then became, external facing as well? How did, and maybe Samir, you want to answer that? How did the program come together to what it is today?
Yeah, absolutely. I can answer that. So what we think of as a program in this case, that we have a community of champions, right? And we think of champions as people who are in organizations who you may never hear from. They're the heroes within their own organization who are driving perhaps the early adopters of technologies like PowerApps. Often they're directly in a business unit, someone on the ground, starting to use these technologies. And we see them as someone who can, in some ways be the intrapreneur is the word I like to use sometimes, to drive that adoption. Now, from a Microsoft perspective, right, we typically don't have a relationship directly with that person, and I often use, an example like Sumit from Heathrow Airport. We don't really have a way to connect with Sumit directly. So what we had started is this Champions program where Sumit, via his, let's say, while he's in PowerApps, via backend telemetry, might get a prompt that shows up saying, we see that you've been doing, and when I say we see, just to be super clear, this is anonymized just telemetry running in the background, right? It's just basically in an anonymous fashion scoring what people are doing, how much they're using the product, and we invite them to join this group. So it really isn't, how we think of traditional programs as you go and apply somewhere and you join in. It's not one of those. It really is something which you would otherwise not know of if we weren't having this conversation. And there are people who, when they get that notification, they can opt in and join this group. We do have them sign an NDA, which helps for more direct conversation with the product team around not only shipped products, but stuff that's coming down the pipe. Yeah. And then, to add to that, really our job there is coming back to what Saurabh was saying, right, is to drive that adoption, kind of nurture this group and form those connections with each other. But then the next aspect of it is celebrating their success, and telling these stories, which I think to me then start to become symbolic of the different personas and what people are doing with the platform.
Interesting. Tell me, do you think that, we're going to have a chat shortly about a range of citizen developers that have come into the program and done very well, but do you think that a citizen developer, let's say a subject matter expert, non-technologist, how long do they stay non-technologists once they've got onto PowerApps and really starting to do stuff? Is it like 3 months and they're really now technologists as well as, their subject matter expertise, why they kind of, the business problems they picked up the tool to start solving?
So my take on that is, at some level, it's a self-label that they assign to themselves, right? And we're going to, once we get into that, we would probably agree and disagree on whether so-and-so is a technologist or not. But for me, the important thing is how do they self-identify? So someone like, if I think of Lauren Taylor, who's an assistant principal at in the Tacoma School District, when she presented at MBAS, she starts speaking about all the things that she is. And she talks about how she's a mom and she's an educator and she's an assistant substitute teacher. And then she said the one thing that she is not is a programmer. She doesn't identify herself as a technologist, right? You ask me, and to me, clearly, Lauren is a technologist. She is driving, like creating solutions. She's tweeting about them. She's encouraging others. So to me, it's less, honestly, it's less about the time frame, because it's not like a linear exam or education path where you now all of a sudden go from being one to not. It's I think the level of technical capability and capacity over time just continues to increase based on their passion and interest. And the piece, I think that's quite relevant, what you mentioned is, talking about is the folks that are often closest to the problem, having them armed with the right technology. And I come back to, we can have so many examples, right? People, 20 years ago, using Excel was considered on the higher end, perhaps for some folks on the higher end of the technology spectrum. Now, when my dad uses Excel, I don't think of him as a technologist because he's using Excel. So that's just one example that comes to mind.
Yeah, so true. So true. What excites me most about PowerApps is that, I've done a lot of research and reading, particularly in the past year, around AI and the fear associated in a lot of sectors that AI is going to replace all our jobs and, that type of thing, of which, after reading about 5 books this year on it, I have no fear of that being the case whatsoever. I'm, quite convinced in that respect. But what I find, PowerApps gives people the opportunity that no matter what their skill sets, to kind of get into IT, even though they might not have done a comp-sci degree or did formal study around, the sciences, maths, that type of thing. It really does provide a way for them to lift their career into a whole new arena around information technology, digital transformation, that type of thing.
No, absolutely. And it's more importantly, it just helps them not be dependent on someone to solve their problems, right? It's they can self-help themselves and move on. And some like solving the problem so much that that becomes their career. And some have a career they're really happy with and want to, sort of delve into solving that problem and moving on with what their day job is.
Yeah, so true. I was on a call with Vivek, and I think he's one of the people we'll talk about shortly, and he said to me yesterday, what the PowerApps is doing is allowing a new generation of people that just want to get things done, and they can pick up the tool and get things done without, if you like, going to somebody else to do it for them. And I just thought that's on point.
Vivek is a classic example. I believe his title is he's in marketing in his organization and has been doing some phenomenal work with PowerApps.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so let's get on to the meat and potatoes of this episode, which is we're going to do 30 stories in 30 minutes. Now, this is going to be quite unique. I know you guys are ready. You've got your stories ready to go. Almost feel like I should have a timer or a bell or something, but I'll let you self-monitor. But Samir, we'll start with you. Is that right? You want to start first, and you're going to take us through some stories and kind of how you do the storytelling within Microsoft.
Yeah, and so just for a little bit of context before we jump into this sprint, more than a marathon sounds like, is we start about 18 months ago, we started sending out internal episodes within Microsoft, really to drive awareness of what citizen developers, IT pros, pro developers, partners, what are they really doing on the ground with the platform? And those episodes, we were sending them once a week. Now we send them once every other week. They really helped, drive both for us understanding in a deeper way what our customers are doing, and then broader within Microsoft, drive that. And then a number of them you see on stage and highlighted at conferences and public stories, blog posts, things like that. So we've been, at the center of it, and through it, I think what's been an amazing side benefit, and to me, in some ways, perhaps longer term, even more valuable than that written document, is perhaps the relationship that we've built up with the people as part of that storytelling process, right? So a little bit of context. We're now, pretty proud to say we're at episode 54. Working on episode 55 at the moment. So that's been a fun journey. But we can, so with that, so that's just a little bit of that context. That's where a lot of these come from. Some of them we turned into storytelling cards to highlight things like that. So with that, Saurabh, are you ready?
We are ready, Samit. Let's do it.
So I'm going to start with Heathrow Airport. And Sumit Saini. I think he's really extremely well known after he was on stage with Satya in 2018 at the Inspire conference. Right? And Sumit started as a security officer at Heathrow. He was there for 13 years. He was tinkering with Excel and other things. He found PowerApps. Sounds like he just sort of really took to it from day one. Started moving processes from paper to digital. One example was an app for translating common phrases as passengers came through their terminal, right? And he talks about it. He's gone from, he saved 950 hours, 72,000 sheets of paper. So we've heard, many have heard about Sumit's story. What I find amazing is the super user community that he's built up within Heathrow over that time. And now you're hearing stories from Naz, Sadiq, Andy Gray, Courtney, a whole bunch of them. James Phillips was there last week. And there's a bunch of activity on LinkedIn around what they all are doing. And there's this sort of groundswell movement with a lot of support from their CIO, Stuart Birrell. So it has this great bottoms up and top down initiative. Awesome. Next, Lauren Taylor. We just spoke about her a little bit. Lauren is 45 minutes away from us over here in the Tacoma Public School District. I would consider her a classic citizen developer, assistant principal at the school. She has, now with it being back to school, has a very busy life there. She really uses PowerApps, Flow, Power BI, Teams to help optimize her teachers' lives, right? She wants to saving time is big for teachers. She's started with an app for improving reading assessments. So instead of kids just being assigned one number, like you're a number 28 on reading, you now get a much more nuanced view and you can capture this detailed information as to where exactly are they along their reading journey. That was one app. Like many of these stories, she started there and she's continued to build on it. All of that data comes back and she visualizes it in Power BI, and it runs all integrated within Teams. So their teachers don't even think of it as being yet this new Power Apps thing. It's all just a part of Teams.
Wow. So tell me, how did she discover Power Apps? Like literally, how did she first discover it?
It's a funny story. You can see her presentation at MBAS. She actually started with Flow, and then she had a support issue with Flow. And when she called the support desk, described what she was trying to do, they said, you should look at perhaps trying Power Apps. You might like it. And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm calling you with a support issue and you want me to try yet another thing? No, thank you. So she got her Flow issue resolved, and then somehow Power Apps kept popping up that was on the back of her mind. And once it was part of course, their Office 365 subscription. So once she started using it, it landed. It was exactly what she wanted. The other thing is she got a lot of support from the community. So, you'll see her now. She put out, hey, I need some help here. And people just jumped in and helped her kind of improve her learning journey.
Awesome. Martin Lee.
Martin Lee from Autoglass. Yeah, so Martin Lee, just starting off with, he's now called the Amazing App Man. He officially got that award internally within Belron. He works for Autoglass, which is part of the Belron Group, which I believe is the largest windshield repair company around. They've got in the US, then they have Safelite, it's Autoglass in the UK. He was a dispatcher. And so Martin was deeply familiar with the processes they used when they dispatched field technicians. He again, really took on Power Apps and started solving problems for the technicians. So examples like when they have an issue with a part and they need to call back a call center, there was a lot of back and forth on the phone and taking paper notes. That's streamlined now through an app, right, that he built. He built a number of apps for field technicians. He he just builds apps. It's pretty phenomenal if you're spending a couple of days with him. So the next thing it went on to is building like a 360-degree feedback app. It kind of extended beyond technician apps to HR apps to drive their leadership conference. There was a conference where people were then taking photographs within the conference from within the app and posting it back. So he got some recognition within the company, and then he was, of course, invited even to present on stage with James Phillips at the keynote at MBAS. He was just presenting at Future Decoded, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah, in London. So good.
It's been great to see Martin's journey and how that's evolved. And he's moved, just like Sumit, he's now in a role where he's actually in IT, right? And his actual title is a PowerApps software developer. So coming back to your earlier question of, he would be considered very much a technologist now, even from a job title standpoint. But still doing work sort of with that same on the ground ethos, understanding deeply the business. Okay, next. I'm sure we're behind time already. Mohamed Al-Khawaja from Hokari Pharmaceuticals in Iraq. This is particularly close to heart since he was episode number 1 for us. We, heard his story in February, I believe, of 2018, and that got us kicked off with the episode momentum that I talked about. He built, so he's a sales and marketing manager at a pharmaceutical company. He built what he calls a DRM as opposed to CRM because it's a doctor relationship management solution. And his sales staff, when they go out and make visits to sell pharmaceuticals to doctors, they end up logging their visits, logging details. So there's all this additional visibility now available via their Power BI reports. And then notifications to supervisors via Flow. So he showed us, almost while we're having a conversation with him, sometimes notification will pop in. So-and-so just visited this doctor, and there's this whole like real-time motion. The other thing I found interesting there is because of that data, they're now also using it to do coaching. So supervisors can coach their sales staff through the application and capture coaching notes. And it's something we've seen with a number of these solutions, right? It's not, you start off with one nugget and you do and it has real value, but then you just keep building on it and turning these ideas into then real working solutions only gets quicker in some ways.
Mm-mm. I like it.
So,
one thing I want to clarify there. Where did you say he's from?
He's from Iraq.
Man, you do not hear in IT circles that every day, right?
Yeah.
As in, this is amazing. And, I've always got I've got a secret belief because of what I'm learning at the moment around some of the stuff out of the International Monetary Fund is that Asia, there's a massive growth or income shift in those countries. And I think, we're going to see a lot more people out of those regions in these success stories going forward.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? Yeah, I find it speaking to Mohammed, where he's dialing in from Iraq and we're over a Teams call looking at demos. It does, there is quite a personal angle to that, which is quite fulfilling.
So good. I love it. Tell us about Red Cross.
Yeah, Red Cross. Our friend Nick Gill at the Red Cross is who we got connected with. We learned of him through the Champions program. He actually had posted a note within there saying he wanted, more information. His actual question was, he didn't use the word citizen developer, but it was effectively, hey, I'm a citizen developer, but I'm doing things which seem IT-ish. Can you help me kind of take things to the next level? And so he was managing a set of volunteers who do training, and he did training as well. So think of it as CPR training, things like that, which the Red Cross does a lot of. He built an app called Supply Hub, which reduced, I would say, the time it takes now for a volunteer to get their training supplies down from 3 to 4 weeks to a matter of 2 to 3 days, right? And this is because it's all, again, moved from them having to do paper, FedEx, a whole bunch of manual steps to now just having an app where they can go and enter information and get supplies delivered. His app has also continued to progress. The one thing he calls out, which I find, which has been fun, couple of nuggets here, is I like his quote where he calls PowerApps his gateway to learning. If it hadn't been for PowerApps, he probably would have never learned things like SQL. Now he's even learning Azure. He's used, Flow, Teams. He's got that. That's right. He's got starting to use adaptive cards in Teams to provide notifications back. He's using Flow to print FedEx labels, starting to connect to APIs. So it's quite amazing how his scenarios have evolved. And then on a career side, he now manages logistics delivery for North America. And he has a team of 10 people, and he's progressed from doing things just in SharePoint to now having licenses for the Common Data Service and building solutions on CDS.
Wow, it's so good. It's so good. It seems like all the stories you're giving are definitely, citizen developer, these subject matter experts that are picking up the technology. Are you seeing other, skill sets like IT pros, even developers that are also embracing PowerApps?
So it's funny you ask, Mark, because I'm going to transition to my friend Saurabh, who might have some examples for us in that category.
Yeah, and for me the classic example there, and again, Mark, I'll try to be a little bit more honest to the 1 minute, unlike Samir, is so for me the classic example there is Schlumberger, because Schlumberger starts off with we start off the story with Alan. Alan's quintessential citizen developer power user at Schlumberger, who picks up the platforms. He has a passion to using PowerApps to build native-looking applications and using a low-code platform. And within a few months, he's churning out and quality applications that are having business impact. And I believe today he has 80-plus applications live. So he's a prolific app developer. And like most folks, like Sumit, not only does he do it himself, he trains folks around him, and now he has 120 plus folks trained to do something similar. So when you look at Schlumberger, we have Alan making great business impact using a low-code tool. The business now starts asking questions saying, what is this tool? We have a lot of pro devs who invest heavily in building high-quality Xamarin apps that make a lot of sense for those scenarios. Is there something in between? And as part of that, this question gets raised to Lad, who runs their mobility studio. So Lad's a quintessential pro developer. He has a team of around 50 folks under him who build pro dev mobile applications. And Lad talks about this story eloquently, and he talked about it at a business application summit. He talks about how his first reaction was knee-jerk to PowerApp, right? This is not for me. I'm a professional developer. I can open up Visual Studio. I don't know this low-code tool. But then Lad did which I shows great maturity at his end. He looked at it to the next level, went over his prejudices, and found that, no, this tool could add a lot of value for professional developers as well. It could be leveraged. Folks, just because you can do it in Visual Studio does not mean that every time folks want to sort of redo the plumbing for an application. You can take building blocks and be far more productive using a low-code platform. And today, Lad is one of our biggest supporters at Schlumberger from a professional developer perspective. And of course, scenarios he tackles tend to be a little bit more complex. They're very often about mobile applications connecting to SAP, for example, using a custom API. So he brings his pro dev expertise there.
That's interesting, because I've been thinking a bit about lately around how do Azure ISVs really consider CDS and the opportunity presented there, so that they, I'm not saying they move away from being Azure ISVs, but they could also look at the journey of becoming a Power Platform ISV. And one of the benefits is this providing a low code platform to the companies that they're selling their solution to. So rather than having to reinvent the Power Platform, they actually can provide it as part of their product suite.
No, exactly. And that's, to be our strategy, even from a Microsoft perspective, right? We will provide, if you look at it from an ISV perspective, if you think of what we provide first party to also be an ISV solution, like we will provide a great customer engagement solution, but we know that it won't work for 100% of the scenarios. There will be last mile apps, and PowerApps is perfect for that. So I see ISVs just like I see our first-party teams. I would hope that they would follow exactly the same strategy. Provide a great SaaS offering that's highly configurable and meets 80% of your customers' needs. For everything last mile, just leverage Power Apps in Flow and Power BI.
I love it. I love it. Who's next?
So next is James Madsen. James Madsen works for another professional developer. So I'm going to stick with the pro dev team, and he works for the largest pharmaceutical retail chain in Australia. And for James, I just wanted to actually quote him directly. I'll just read a quote. At first, I approached the utilization of Power Apps as simply a presentation layer. And even in that, I wasn't disappointed. Power Apps allowed me to very quickly stand up a visually pleasing and compelling front end, complete with dashboard-style metrics, styles, and values that provided the users with the ability to see at a glance how a store in question was tracking in terms of retail metrics and store visit information. The speed at which I could build out these on-screen components helped me realize the appeal of low-code platforms. But as I began to experiment further, I started to understand that Power Apps still has so much to offer a full-stack developer such as myself. And the reason I like that quote is because it's a very typical journey. Folks start off saying, let it at least handle the UI layer for me. Then like, hey, why don't I just use the connectors? And hey, what about if I start connecting it to additional backends like SAP connectivity potentially? And we've seen a lot of professional developers take that journey along with us.
So good. So good. Who's next?
Yeah, Interpipeline is next. And Interpipeline's, again, an organization where there is Nipa for Interpipeline, who's their CIO, and it's bringing about a big change at Interpipeline. She's a big believer in low-code platforms and essentially bottom-up innovation. Again, she did a great presentation about her approach to low-code innovation at the Business Application Summit as well. So she's leading transformation there. In her IT team is Kent. Kent is an MVP for BizTalk. He's an MVP for Power Apps and Flow now as well. And just to point out an example of a transformation they've enabled was they had an IT conference recently. And instead of just talking about low code, they wanted to showcase it. So they built a custom app for that conference that was a Canvas app on the front end. So any person attending the conference got a native looking Power App that they used on their mobile phone. They could find what sessions were going on. They could find where they were. They could get directions to the sessions. They could chat about the conference. They could rate the speakers, what you would expect in a typical conference app. All the back office of that application is a model-driven application because all that data goes in CDS. So it's the folks setting up the conference, who's the speaker, what sessions, all that happened in a model-driven app. There is a Power BI dashboard that goes on top of it to figure out how many folks are using the app, what was the rating of an average session. And most importantly, this was something that Kent built within a week, right? It was something in-house or a single developer with his day job could build, churn out, and actually have folks use at a conference. That's the power of low code for when in the right hands. Similarly, in the similar vein is TransAlta. TransAlta is an energy company in Canada, and they were going through a transformation themselves, as most energy companies are. And the reason I really like TransAlta is it was among the few very early wins we had on Power Apps when we had just gone GA. And here again, it was professional developers picking up the Power Platform and solving very unique scenarios that only folks close to the business can solve and only make sense if solved by a low-code platform. And what I mean by that is there was a scenario where they wanted an app to help with the scheduling of folks who service wind turbines. And there was a lot of data that went into that scheduling, even figuring out if what the wind speed was and if it was worth even servicing it right now or just waiting for a few more days when it was during off-peak hours. Folks think along those lines. And this was an application that was the process that was done manually and was something that IT was not willing to invest in the traditional pro dev scenario to build an app for because it was too expensive for vague return on investment. But because they were able to build it on low code and quickly prove the value in there, that app still now lives on and is a showcase of what low code can do at TransAlta. And then it just took off from there to them building a series of other applications.
So good. So once again, like I asked before around the citizen devs, how did the pro devs discover CDS, or were they already using it and they basically look at the repertoire of tools available to them and chose the Power Platform and PowerApps was the best way to go?
Yeah, so I guess it's mostly through, in some ways, a lot of it is through what I talked about, essentially highlighting being the champions of our champions or celebrating success. So a lot of folks do discover it in terms of looking at the stories that are out there, in terms of going to our conferences and seeing Satya mention it in a keynote. Because we do have, with pro developers particularly, they are fairly well tuned to Microsoft, and we've always been a very developer-focused organization. So a lot of folks come through it from hearing about it from others who've been successful or our leaders talking about it. So while power users, I think, find it more organically.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
Professional developers generally find it through our Microsoft evangelism channels.
Yeah, so good. Now you said you were going to stick to a minute, and I think you're over that. But let's talk about Virgin Atlantic.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this one because this is such a popular story already. So Manuela from Virgin Atlantic, she's in IT Lite within Virgin, and she was driving .NET and InfoPath. But the main piece that when Manuela talks about is that Virgin was going through mobile transformation, right? The workers were getting more and more mobile, and she felt as if she wasn't contributing to that. She was left out because she was not a mobile developer. But what PowerApps opened up for her was, as she discovered PowerApps, suddenly she was playing in that field, right? She was churning out quality applications in the mobile space. And then, of course, she became the champion. She became the PowerApps girl at Virgin, helping a whole community grow along with her. I'll try to stick to the 1 minute, so I'll go a little quick on the next few. SBB, the Swiss railroad. Martin from SBB, another great example of someone in IT. His challenge was they had 300 plus SharePoint legacy forms that they need to move over.
So these would have been InfoPath forms, right?
So they had actually an investment in a custom ISV solution on top of SharePoint.
Okay.
So they were using,
Gotcha.
they have InfoPath as well, but predominantly these forms were on a custom ISV solution on SharePoint, and they were looking to modernize them. And that's what they did. They've been successful in migrating 300 of these over. And again, Martin's story was at the Business Application Summit as well. And in true Swiss fashion, what's impressive is what they've achieved with the platform, but also how they went about doing it, right? They put a flowchart in place. They have a very well-described process on what the steps they go through to look at a form, decide if it's worth modernizing, how they end up modernizing it in PowerApps, and then it comes out efficiently at the end of the pipeline.
Saurabh, I'll jump in, and the one thing Martin said which struck for me is, people found you start with a form and you may end up with an app, right? And people internally who spent more time just got more out of it because you have these much more than just a form at the end.
Yeah. What I find interesting also, just back on Virgin's story, is that Forms Pro is also paying quite a feature in even, how that now links into the Power Platform, and it can do a bunch of workloads that you don't even necessarily use a Power App for, which I think is awesome.
Makes sense. Yeah. And to cap off my IT and pro dev pieces, I'll just talk about Microsoft. So within Microsoft, we have a series of what we call the Thrive applications. These are a series of employee experience applications. And again, we've blogged about them. This is all live. It's a series of 4 or 5 applications that we share with all our employees, so shared with 100,000 plus Microsoft employees. And it's about giving a kudos to a colleague. It's about doing your time and absence reporting. So core business stuff that it talks to payroll on the back end. This Power App actually talks to an SAP on-premise server for some payroll functions. And I think within each month, we have around 15 to 20,000 Microsoft employees who use these applications. So just from a scale perspective, right, it's shared with the organization. with some business critical stuff on the back end and heavy usage. And again, as folks look at, if you look online, you'll see screenshots of it. It's native grade UI for these applications.
That's so good. So good. Samir, your turn.
Yeah, I'll throw in one more thing on the Thrive side, just a quick plug that Mehdi on our team recently posted a version of those apps that anyone could download and deploy in their own CDS environment and try them out.
Okay.
So there's a recent blog post within the last month that gives you those packages. All right, so moving on, let's see how we do. The next one is what I think of as our patient zero. Often we joke is Eric Mckinney from Gnj Pepsi. You may have seen him recently at the Inspire conference where Satya proudly held up his champ card that Eric had signed. He's been, I'm kind of working backwards. Recently, he's been an early adopter of the AI Builder technology, and that was what he showcased at Inspire. But moving back, he's built 20 plus apps in their organization, saved now over $1 million plus collectively. He got started, his first app went live the day that PowerApps GA'd, started with a store audit solution for their folks in the field. Gnj Pepsi is one of the largest family-owned bottlers for Pepsi. And Eric was the code he uses himself. He's in IT, but he wasn't an app developer at all, right? He was used to manage infrastructure, manage servers, did a little bit of data analysis. And he jokes that he went from hugging servers to building apps, right? So he was really now getting to solving business problems, which is what he now prides himself in. And he's, of course, then trained up others. Similar story of how he's not just helped himself, but others in the organization. Next, I'll talk. Any questions on Eric? We could spend 2 hours on Eric and his journey.
I just love in that scenario, what jumped to mind there for me was creating business value rapidly, where in the past, talking about the service scenario, you had to do a lot of stuff before you could create business value. PowerApps allows you to do not much stuff and get business value straight away.
Yeah, and it's also amazing. He still manages, what their cloud aspects, but he's also, in a sense, upskilled himself and upskilled the business, right, in the process. Next is an example of partners in health. So moving back to a few more citizen developer stories. This is in the nonprofit space, partners in health. Bella over there built an app to manage their gift review process. So they get donations. They need to help manage those donations and often review them to see if there are any errors. Again, that used to be a complicated spreadsheet process. She's moved that into a simple app that then ties back into their other systems to further inform people if action needs to be taken. She started off as a data analyst, and now she's added app building to her tool belt, right? Rebecca Sackett from Customer Products. So I would highly encourage people to see her demo from Embass if you haven't. Customer Products is a 200-person, small business, custom air-conditioned manufacturing company in Texas. And what Rebecca built is essentially she's replaced their entire paper-based process for doing sign-offs during manufacturing over into digital. They had these things called traveler documents because they call them travelers because they would literally travel with each unit. Each unit is custom built from scratch. You can imagine with paper dockets traveling around, sometimes they'd fall, get wet, things like that. And literally every sign off as it goes from manufacturing to quality checks to shipping is all done on that one paper document. It's now 100% replaced with digital. And she was an Access developer that then picked up PowerApps and ran with it. She's using Flow to print out invoices. So that's also, and she talks about exactly how she did that, which is, again, another one of those scenarios I see where typically it would take a lot more moving pieces to get something like that up and running. They use it. A little anecdote is they end up using these apps also in what they call duck walks. So every other day, they have their technicians go around with PowerApps on their tablet devices, checking machines, and then checking off things digital. But it's just a great example to me, again, of so much that happens in that manufacturing process on paper now being all digital without requiring, large IT budgets. Next, we spoke a bit about Vivek already, so I'll keep that short. Vivek works at Regal Beloit. Mark, you're probably going to sounds like you'll have him on the show and get a lot more detail there. But he, as a sales and marketing manager, has built out applications to help his own sales teams, right? So they can provide these detailed cost savings cost-saving calculations to their customers while on the field. He's got apps to showcase his products. There's with images and videos. It's sort of taking data that might live in their dynamic systems and other places and making it come alive on mobile. And then Vivek, super passionate member of the community. He was one of the folks, I think that, I believe that started the meme, the Power Addicts, #Power Addicts meme, one of the few folks that got that going, and now an MVP as well, and extremely active in the community. Vivek really is. And, speaking of great guys, we've got Sir Keith Watling. Hopefully someday he'll get a knighthood for everything he's done. You've had him on the show. So again, we could spend hours about Keith's work. Professionally, his history has been interesting because he started as a multimedia geek. I keep coming back to your question of, is he a technologist? Is he not a technologist, right? In some ways, he very much is, but he's not a professional developer technologist. He started in the 90s as a multimedia geek. At some point during the bust, got frustrated with all of that and went and was driving buses for Arriva. And then from there, ended up being in the operations side, building super complex spreadsheets. I believe he won an award for building a spreadsheet. And then he's taken all of that knowledge and turned it into an application, right, into apps to help with optimize different processes, such as, when a bus breaks down and it needs to be repaired, helping manage that communication, connecting directly to the TFL, I believe, TFL APIs. So it starts again, some fairly sophisticated solutions built with low-code tools. Keith is, again, he's one of the folks that, again, kind of started the whole #Power Addicts movement in some ways. And he's just so passionate about really helping other people and lifting them up and bringing them along on this journey. If you speak to him over beers, he's like, Samir, what I'm really looking for is how do I find other Summits and Martin Lees and Rebecca's and amplify the work that they're doing, but also connect them with others in the community. So great guy. Yeah.
So good. He's one of the guys that I'm surprised he haven't stuck a blue badge on, because he has such an interesting way of thinking about things and really understanding the beginner's journey. And a lot of people forget what it's like to be a beginner, with this technology. And I love that he's not a status quo guy. He's always thinking outside the box. He's always innovating in the way he thinks about an idea or a concept or an application of technology. So, you should be moving heaven and earth to get a blue badge on that lad.
Yeah, I mean, in the community... Yeah, from a citizen development perspective, he definitely, he embodies the kinds of things we want to grow, and then the platform, and he understands the broader spectrum of the platform. Is it my turn, or Saurabh, am I handing off to you?
It's time. Saurabh told us a bit about, there's been a lot of talk in the market lately about COEs and, Center of Excellence. And I know you've got some IP. In fact, I think we talked on our last call about this around some templates and bits and pieces to establish these. But Saurabh, can you tell us a bit about the organizations that have been quite successful in doing this?
No, absolutely. And it's a reflection on the maturity of the platform, right? So when we first started, we talked to people about just being successful on PowerApps, and then they'd have their next 10 apps, then 50 apps, and then 100 apps. And then the conversation very quickly goes to, okay, we get the platform, it's successful, it's phenomenal. What we need is, how do we find the right yin and yang balance? How do we put the right guardrails in place without stifling innovation? And that's exactly where the COE fits in. And I know we keep referring to our Business Application Summit, but we did a session there on guidance around how to establish a COE. And we talk about 4 items in there is you need to set the right guardrails. You need to nurture growth. You need to have a support model in there, and you need to have infrastructure to automate a lot of manual processes as the volume grows for these applications. And all of this guidance that we give out came from our early engagements with customers, and I can maybe bundle a few of them in here, right? Standard Bank and SNCF were two of the earliest customers we engaged with at scale. And both are now at 100, 150 plus apps in production, and maybe even higher. They were at 100 almost a year back. And they've taken the approach of exactly that maturity, where they've kept a central team that keeps an eye out, but not with an eye of just stifling innovation, more about keeping an eye out, keeping folks within the guardrail, but also playing a great nurture function, making sure that if they see someone building an application in one business unit, figuring out if a different business unit could use it, figuring out where a power user has reached a point where some training might help them get over a hump, and establishing training programs around that place. Even simple stuff like taking applications that folks have built and just showcasing them, just what we do externally, being champions of their champions internally in that organization. So a lot of investment has gone in from Standard Bank and SNCF in terms of being thoughtful about how PowerApps is adopted in their organization, and that reflects in the success that they've seen. So again, both for Standard Bank and SNCF, we could do a full show, and actually maybe you should. We can have Ian and others from show up and just talk for an hour about their approach on PowerApps. But they've been it's all public and out there in blogs. The next level of maturity on Center of Excellence is Chevron, which has taken a fairly large bet on PowerApps as being the low-code platform for their organization, and everyone in Chevron now has the full PowerApps licenses to innovate. And our team has been deeply involved with them in setting up what is a fairly big investment at their end. Today, I think it's around 20 folks at Chevron full-time with a whole series of partners helping with that innovation at Chevron. And they follow very closely sort of the model we talked about. They have a lot of infrastructure built in at Chevron, where almost any task that needs to be done a few times is automated using our APIs. There's a big effort on community. We just had a week-long training at Chevron where we trained their leaders from different business units who will then take back that learning and apply it to their business units. They have a whole team set up to do the power user support I talked about, how helping power users get over the hump if they do run into technical difficulties. And then a whole team dedicated to supporting the business units to figure out how they can get value out of this low-code platform. So a very structured approach to a center of excellence already in, not just in paper, it's already implemented and paying dividends. They publicly talked about having 5,000 folks using PowerApps a few months back, and I can tell you that's phenomenally higher already today. So again, they do talk about their approach to Center of Excellence publicly at the Business Application Summit. And then another person I would love to mention from a Center of Excellence community perspective is Simon. So Simon started sort of a movement at GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, the pharma company, around a series of folks who are lovingly called the Power Rangers. He started with a set of 8 folks in one particular manufacturing facility in the UK. They would get together weekly, take business problems, try to solve them in a community fashion, help each other out. That community of 8 has now grown to 1,000 in GSK in just 1 year.
1,000.
They've got recognition from their management. They've one of the applications they built was what they call a ZAP app. It was an application to maintain safety within their manufacturing facilities. And once it was successful in one manufacturing location, they realized this applied to, I believe, 47 other countries. And that same thing was replicated at different geolocations. So again, a pure organic center of excellence in codes, but that started off with a bunch of 8 passionate rangers that has now grown to 1,000.
Incredible.
Couple of quick things on the Chevron. There was one anecdote that has always stuck with me that Warren, who runs their COE, mentioned, is he quickly, when he looked at the platform, his viewpoint quickly went from, not just how do I build a few apps. He was like, everything I do is how do I build, thousands of apps, and how do I enable hundreds, if not thousands of app makers, right? And the lens that he puts on when thinking from that dimension for everything is quite different than how do I take this particular app into production. So
good. One of the in fact, I was on a live stream earlier today that I run over on YouTube. Steve Mordew and myself always chat for an hour with video, etc. And one of the things that come up is a concern by partners that they're feeling that Microsoft doesn't care about them anymore, that there's nothing for them to do if the citizens are doing it all. But do you have any success stories of where partners are, being successful in the PowerApp space?
Yeah. So my short answer to that comment is not true, as in that is definitely not true about partners. And we have, in fact, on our Akansha, who manages the PowerApps partner program. She's effectively an extension of our team. We're in a sister team, and she's extremely super passionate about everything that we speak about with customers. You could translate that, and that's the energy, if not more, that she brings when talking about partners. And the whole idea is for us to be able to equip partners with these tool sets to really be able to move in some sense quicker, faster, cheaper, right? And just as you're adding to your tool belt, you're adding it whether you're a partner who used to do only data analysis that can now do app building. You're a partner that was a Dynamics partner that can now play in more worlds or build more sophisticated end-to-end solutions because of the platform. And we could go down the list, right, of the angles where you may come in from a traditional mobile development shop. In fact, one of the things we're seeing with partners is just like Microsoft is, they don't know where to fit this into their practice, right? Does it go in their SharePoint practice, Dynamics practice, app dev practice? And in some sense, the answer is all of the above. And there's a COE angle, which I think my guess is down the road, you will have partners coming in and really helping what Chevron, for example, and this is just me kind of, my opinion here, is what someone like Chevron has built up, what Saurabh mentioned, as an internal, fairly sophisticated team running their COE. I could entirely see that being run, operated, managed by a partner, right? And so from a story perspective,
just to add to that, but I should have mentioned this earlier, on the COE, my team puts out what we call a COE starter kit. I know James Olenek talked about it when he was on your show as well. And then we've had a few partners like Applied Information Sciences who've taken that and had an adoption framework that they present. We have a few other partners like PowerObject that also has a COE in a box offering. And so does our Microsoft MCS consulting as an offer as well.
Nice. So do you have some success stories of partners that are nailing it in this space?
Yeah, I'll give you. So we have a few that I could list out. One, I was impressed with what Quantic has done with the nonprofit Leonard Cheshire. And what really stood out for me there, so Leonard Cheshire is a nonprofit that provides care for folks with disability. Quantic has really broadened the full power of Dynamics and the Power Platform. I mean, their solution, which is used by Leonard Cheshire to go out and manage care plans for the people in their community. They've taken, I would say Dynamics 365, CRM, the CRM aspects, finance and operations. Some of this is currently in development. Other pieces have landed. They've built model-driven apps where you can go and manage your care plans. They've got mobile canvas apps, which are used by people out in the field to then, collect evidence and collect information. The cool thing is then that same app runs embedded within the model-driven app, so there's no new development, and they see it in the back office integrated in. Plus, it integrates with Microsoft Teams and SharePoint and other properties. So if I look at their sort of one view architecture stack, it's like taking all of these Microsoft pieces and bringing them to bear in one solution. Again, they had presented at Embass. You could see them, both Deepash from Leonard Cheshire and Matt from Quantic. Another example is Macaw. Macaw actually just yesterday was speaking with them. They were sharing how they've taken that COE starter kit and then are starting to build on it and add their pieces and taking that out to organization they're speaking with. They deployed a solution at Eneco. Eneco is a energy company in the Netherlands, where they opened their new state-of-the-art facility for 2,000 odd people. And they had, you have this new state-of-art facility. Meanwhile, people are running around with notes stuck on conference rooms to book ad hoc rooms, right? You have a number of these ad hoc rooms that people didn't know whether they were available or not. In their case, they built a simple mobile app on top of SharePoint, which has digitized that process and brought forward which reflects to align with the state-of-the-art facility in some way. And I could go down. I know we're from, there's Datacom in New Zealand doing work with the local government there of Canterbury, building project management solutions. You have
I think one of those guys just became an MVP from there day before yesterday.
From Datacom?
I think so. Yeah.
Could be. We've been quite connected with Rich over there. So I saw him pop up in the Global Hack as well. They've been doing some great work down there. Intelikia in the Tenerife are working with the Island Council of Tenerife, local government again. They run programs for senior citizens, so encouraging them to get out and promote wellness and organizing, anywhere things from dance classes to yoga classes and local events. They built, in this case, it's PowerApps running embedded within a SharePoint list, right, as a customized form that they now use to coordinate all of their activities. And they've had, 1,000+ events organized through this system. Again, it takes away all of the hassle they had from managing these things on paper and email into one single solution. It's also the folks there who using it are particularly non-tech savvy, and for them to have that show up within a familiar SharePoint experience that they were used to was a big win there. So again, local partner, I love. From a partner side, we're working with Eichel, and he's put out, this is more his community side. It is another thing that I found interesting, just seeing what people are doing on Twitter, is you've got partners doing these implementations, but then they're also plugged into the community, and they're just, in many ways, just giving, right? They put out templates, put out samples. He created a version of what he calls Power Twitter, which is a pixel perfect implementation of Twitter done in PowerApps, put out on the community gallery, right? And then that encourages, it's just showing the art of the possible in some ways. And the other two, I think with Power Objects built an extension for Kelly Roofing. They built an extension to their Dynamics implementation, so that when their technicians are repairing roofs, building new roofs, to take photographs and then upload them back into SharePoint, connect them back to Dynamics, as well as do some quick status updates, was a bit of a cumbersome process with, they had a 10-step flowchart in how they did it through emails and renaming files. All of that is simplified, and, with a few clicks, their pictures are all getting documented. So yeah, that's a quick one of partners, and we could go on. I mean, I think partners, we from our perspective, at least from my perspective, certainly I'm seeing a lot of activity with how partners going out and engaging in various aspects of the cycle, all the way from pre-sales to delivery to then what we come back and help them celebrate their success.
So good. Well, we've got 4 to go. Saurabh, you might as well take the last 4.
Okay, I'll take them. And again, these are partner stories as well. And so one of them is Metro Bank, a bank that runs on our Dynamics systems. They had a scenario where they wanted what I would call a satellite app, right? They had an experience where when folks enter their retail setting, meaning their bank itself, they were greeted with someone with a pen and paper asking them on what they were there for and helping them get scheduled. That did not meet the appeal that they had in terms of being a technology-first bank. So they wanted to modernize the greeter experience. And that's exactly what they did by building a tablet PowerApps that in turn connected to their CRM system, but provided a great interface on a ruggedized Surface tablet so that when someone came in, their data could be entered, they could be connected with the right people, they could be told what the wait time will be, and they could be notified via text messages if they wanted to wait, go do their shopping while their appointment was not ready. And it's a great implementation of PowerApps on top of CRM with some Azure thrown in with machine learning to calculate the wait times. And all of this we did in conjunction with a great partner, IBM.
Excellent. For Metro, Lee Baker, I don't know if you know Lee, but
absolutely,
man, he's massively in the community. Really, he's a massive champion. I see him at just about every event that is on in London. Great community contributor.
No, absolutely. And we are looking forward to meeting Lee soon in November when we'll be in Europe. But no, absolutely. And this will continue to be phenomenal work coming out of Metro Bank, I believe, in this space. Another example in keeping the UK theme is Hsbc, another bank in London. They had a partner, Invoices. They reached out with a specific scenario around their relationship managers. These are folks who on the phone will talk to clients and help them find the right offerings within HSBC for them. So if you're a relationship manager in London talking to a client in Spain, it's considered cross-border trade if you sell an offering to them, and there are some legal implications to it. To get approval from a legal implication, it used to be an Excel spreadsheet, which has now graduated to being a great-looking mobile app that Infosys built for HSBC. They enter in the criteria. It gives them a red, green. It gives them a conditional green, letting them know that this makes sense, but under these conditions. So it's a Canvas app on the front end for the relationship managers and a model-driven form on the back end that the lawyers use to keep updating the latest legal status as these rules change. Great success story by Infosys, which then went on to build a lot more of these for different customers and now have a fairly thriving practice on the Power Platform. I also wanted to talk about, when we talk about IBM and Infosys, also talk about what I would call almost a boutique partner, right? We have a partner called Confluent, who was one of the earliest partners we had on the Power Platform journey. And they did some phenomenal work as well. So you don't have to be a large GSI. You could be 2, 3, 10, 20-person team doing great work on PowerApps. And Confluent worked with IPS, which is International Pump Systems, and essentially digitized their entire process. Everything moved from being paper-based, and we have images they show us where everything used to be on a big whiteboard with bundles of paper, all moving to a ruggedized Android tablet on the workflow being used by the pump repair specialists who follow a very detailed process on dismantling a pump, and then that same process in reverse order to assemble it back again with a lot of images taken at every step to make sure nothing goes wrong. And again, we visited one of their workshops in Portland. It was very gratifying to see folks using it, getting value out of it. There's just something very gratifying about seeing your platform in real use. Same thing, I stopped by at Metro Bank at their Reading branch, and immediately someone came up to me with a Surface tablet with the app running, asking me what I was there for. So very gratifying. And on the gratifying end, we'll end with the HopeLink, which is a nonprofit close to us here based in Seattle. They are, again, completely transforming their entire technology stack on the Power Platform. They're taking a set of discrete processes, combining them onto one data model on CDS with the whole series of Canvas model, Canvas in model, business process flows. So they're redoing their entire technology stack on top of the Power Platform. And they're doing it with the help of what I would again call a boutique partner, Seattle App Labs, a great shop locally that typically did pro dev, mobile app development that is now providing value on the dynamic stack, on the Power Platform stack for HopeLink.
So good. Well, there we go. 30 in 30-ish minutes. We hit our numbers. If people want to actually drill in, to these separate case studies, what's the link that they can access that on?
I can share one of that. So one I would say is if you go to aka.ms/PowerApps resources, that has a section for customer stories. And what it has is multiple links. So in some cases where the stories are conference presentations, some of them are case studies. That's a decent summarized list to start with. Some of them that are not there, Mark, perhaps we'll send you some links to add to your show notes as well.
Sounds great.
And keep an eye out because this list will only keep increasing, both on our blog, on our marketing channels, through conference videos. It'll go on. I'll throw a shout out for just last week. A video on Lauren Taylor got published. So I would look for that on the PowerApps YouTube channel.
Send me a link to that one. We'll get in the show notes. Okay, let's wrap up with some quick fire questions. First of all, who's going to go first?
I can go.
Okay, Saurabh, left hand or right hand?
The right hand.
Okay, here's your questions. Are you ready? 6 questions, quick fire. Got nothing to do with work, nothing to do with work or business, but they're going to put you on the spot. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's the most surprising self-realization you've had?
Oh, how much I love this job that I'm doing. Yes, the customer, moving from product development to working closer with customers was the best career move I ever made.
I love it. Okay, here's another one. What's a skill you learned when you were young that you still use today?
Oh, everything. I think almost everything that we learned, I would say problem solving. I think I see my kid grow as well. I think it's there's a lot of things they learn, but the biggest thing you learn is problem solving and how to tackle problems.
I like it. Would you rather experience the beginning of the planet Earth or the end of planet Earth?
Beginning, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm with the dinosaurs.
Okay, what's the worst job you've ever had? Now, I know you said you've only worked for Microsoft, but I assume you did the odd jobs growing up as well.
No, it's not even at Microsoft. To be honest, there are to my earlier answer. Right, there were elements of my career at Microsoft where I was a little disconnected from the application of my technology, and at least for me personally, I've realized that it's very important how the technology is applied. So it wasn't as gratifying to me to be building technology just for the sake of technology. I'm very driven to it being practically used.
I love it. What's the last thing you bought for under $50 that you love and use often?
Not under 50, but I bought these noise canceling headphones, which are slightly on the expensive side, and I always thought they were not worth that price. But ever since I've got them, I absolutely love them.
What's the brand?
This one's, it's not Bose. It's, I forget. What's the German brand?
Sennheiser?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Last one for you. If you could buy your dream house, what is one weird room or feature you would have in it?
One feature I want 2 dishwashers is my only ask. Is I don't mind loading the dishwasher. I hate unloading it. So I just wanted to move between 2 dishwashers. I keep convincing my wife on that.
I love it. Okay, Samir, your turn. You ready for your 6?
I am not as ready as Saurabh was.
He was
seemed
on
like
it,
he had
right?
prepared
He
for
was
this
so
thing.
ready.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, Here you go. If you could know when and how you're going to die, would you want to know?
Not really. I don't care. Yeah. I wouldn't mind, but I don't care. Yeah.
If you have to relive the same day for the rest of your life, which day would you choose?
It'd be some boring weekend where I was out with my kids and wife, just doing nothing particularly exciting, but just out maybe hiking or something like that.
I like it. Okay, describe your worst date ever.
My worst date ever?
Yeah. Like, did something go wrong or not as planned or what?
Might have to take a pass on that one.
Okay, I'll let you come back to it at the
end.
I'll
come back. I might come back to that.
I can tell you that Samir's best date was at the baggage claim counter in Utah Airport. Isn't that true, Samir?
That's where I met my wife at Salt Lake City Airport.
Oh, that's so cool.
Now wife. That was 1996.
So is it love at first sight?
I don't know if it was love at first sight, but when you're, it's a longer story. When you're in a place where you find someone where you align with them, things click. Yeah,
Nice.
I'll just leave it in an abstract way.
Yeah, that's good. Would you rather be rich or famous?
I'm gonna give you a cheesy answer on that one, Mark, because which is more honest. I'd like to make other people rich and famous.
Nice. A bit aligned with Satya's vision of what's his quote about not being superstars in Microsoft but creating them, or something to that
Making
effect?
others cool.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Okay, second to last. What book have you read recently that you would recommend and why?
There's one I recommended to you, which was Seth Godin's book. This is Marketing.
And what did I do? I read it, right?
Yeah, he talks about
good.
Again, he uses the word marketing, but it really comes back to, building relationships, finding your tribe, really addressing the folks that are not trying to, play to just the masses and the spam form of marketing, but truly relationship building focused approach. Yeah.
I like it. My key takeaway, if you're spending money on marketing, like you spend money when you don't know what you're doing. And I know it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but that was such a powerful... I think every Microsoft partner needs to go out and read that book if they're struggling with their marketing. Last one for you.
Yes.
What chance encounter, I think I already know the answer, changed your life forever?
I was coming back from a Microsoft internship in 1996, and at the airport on the shuttle back to school to Provo, Utah, I met someone who years later we got married, and a few years after that we had kids. So
wow, that's cool.
That's my chance encounter.
That's so cool. Well, you guys have been legends. It's been so good to have you on the show. The final question for each of you, well, the second to final question is this, and you've got to give me an honest answer. I want a blue badge name, but who do you recommend, Samir, as a future guest on the show?
Yeah, I would think I'd recommend having Akansha and Colleen, who run our partner programs. You might have both of them on the show or one at a time, but would reach out to them.
Let's get them on separately. Can you introduce those to me? That'd be awesome.
Yep, happy to do that.
Saurabh, what about you?
So Samir stole my answer. I thought it was going to be a combined question. Who else? I would say it would be good doing a session with... I guess you already had Manuela on the show as well. Maybe Mehdi from... So Mehdi's part of our team, and he does some phenomenal work with open source tools around PowerApps, templates, best practices.
Sounds good.
Next level of more geeking out on PowerApps is what Mehdi would be great for.
Excellent. Okay, gentlemen, if people want to trace or track or where you kind of live in the digital social landscape, are you on Twitter, LinkedIn? Where's the best way for them to follow your posts? Or do you have a specific URL they should go to? Samir, you're up first.
You can find me on Twitter. It's at Samir Bhangar. Always feel free to email. It's samirb@microsoft.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, although not particularly active on LinkedIn. Yeah,
and I'm on Twitter at Saurabh Pant. SAURABHPANT, spant at Microsoft. For folks who want to email, we generally blog using PowerApps blog, so that I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in PowerApps to just set up a flow, and I think it's a standard template where you get an email anytime something new is posted on PowerApp blog. That's how I keep myself updated. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well and a few other social media channels.
Hey, thanks for listening. My name is Mark Smith. I'm your host, also known as the NZ365 guy. I hope you enjoyed that episode. As I said at the start, in the show notes, you will be able to find all the links to the resources that we have. You'll find those at nz365guy.com/136. If you enjoyed this episode and the other episodes, I'd love it if you'd go to iTunes and leave me a review. I've created a quick link to it, so if you go to nz365guy.com/iTunes, it'll take you straight to the page if you want to leave a review for the show. Thanks again, and have a great week.